Today is the second day of the 7-day February 1985 retreat. There's no specific topic that comes to mind. We will rather talk freely. About so many things that come up in a retreat if one sits in all openness without imposing illusions, elusive goals upon the sitting. Things that do come up are pain and fear, pleasure, wanting, anger, hatred. All the things that in our daily life, if we keep very busy, very occupied, we either manage to keep at the periphery or ignore after something has exploded, to ignore it afterwards, so as not to be disturbed. We say time and time again that it is of utmost importance that a human being understand the human mind as it manifests in each one of us. Not I must understand my personal mind and be identified with it from the very beginning, take that identification for natural and for granted. But rather the way we put it is to understand the human mind as it manifests in each one of us. Including its personal idiosyncrasies as they come up, which may be unique to oneself, but each human being has personal idiosyncrasies. That is universal. And why is it that the human being needs to understand directly, be directly in touch with the functioning of his or her mind, or of the human mind? The emphasis being on directly, not read books that others have written about the mind, but see for oneself directly how it operates from moment to moment. In companionship with the whole organism, in association with the whole body, so that one really needs to speak about the body-mind, because they're so closely interrelated. Why is it that this needs to be directly understood and seen from moment to moment? Not known about through what one has heard and remembered, but directly witnessed, directly seen into. Unless this happens, one is inevitably propelled, motivated by unconscious conditionings or programs, name it as you wish. The word is not important. One is unconsciously motivated by ancient patterns laid down in the brain, not just of one's own childhood and adolescence, the years that one has lived, but the ones who have influenced us. Our elders were themselves influenced by their parents, teachers, peers, society, culture. so that one can say that we, as we live today from moment to moment, are the product of everything that has gone on before. As somehow or other laid down, traced out in this human brain, which is more ancient than the human race. As a part deep in the stem which is called, I believe, the reptilian brain, because it has been traced out to time immemorial. The animal development and evolution is also contained in this human brain. And unless from moment to moment there is insight into its functioning and consequences affecting the whole organism, its glands and organs, muscles, the emotions, the feelings, unless this is seen as clearly as a landscape that unfolds before one in all clarity, unless this is seen, one is controlled by automatism. One is on automatic. Conditioned patterns ruling one unconsciously or semi-consciously. One hears so much fear expressed, particularly in this country which calls itself a democracy. Such fear of authoritarian government or institutions. But the greatest, severest authority sits inside of us. The authority of our whole past conditioning, expressed in our opinions, our convictions and beliefs. Our wishes and desires, aspirations. It is all conditioned. And it remains the authority within unless light is shed upon the whole process of how we think and desire and fear and aspire and escape. Not hoping for some explosive moment in one's meditation practice to clear away all obstacles and problems once and forever, and then live in eternal bliss. But to start this instant, without any postponement for times of greater development of future lives or whatever, no postponement, but this instant starting to attend, to look within and listen within and without, and see if there can be a perception of what is actually going on. Not knowing what that perception will be. If one knows what it will be, it is the authority of past knowledge that speaks or expects. And to say, I cannot do it, is, I think, invalid. It is past conditioning. Some people to say, I can do it because one was always successful, praised by parents, teachers, one was better than older or younger brothers and sisters, so one has developed a certain sense of competency and confidence, and another one who was compared negatively with older brothers, sisters, or teacher preferred other answers to one's own, so one has a conditioned feeling, I can't do it. But what one really can do, one doesn't know. Apart from what people have told one that one can do, what one is good at and what one is not good at, can that all be brushed aside? And one starts freshly to look and inquire into, as one person said, into the mess that reveals itself as one sits down. Mess of confusion, as some people call it. But this is already a label. And its ingredient is judgment, that what is discovered or seen is bad, undesirable. And with this label, mess or confusion, comes immediately a reaction, because this is how the brain is conditioned, to label and to react to what is labeled as good or bad, desirable or undesirable, to be kept or to be avoided, based on past experience of oneself or one's parents and their parents, and therefore preventing being in touch what is actually there if no label is used and therefore no reaction elicited. Is that possible? To sit down, face, be in touch with whatever is there and not call it by any name? Or if a name has already come up, to see, yeah, that's what's happened. And look again, putting the name aside. And experiment with being in touch or seeing or listening to something without having a name for it. Is that possible? If one sees the utter importance of it, one will experiment with it. As human beings since time immemorial have experimented with anything that was considered important to them. And in the whole technological realm, achieved miraculous results. Everything has been investigated and experimented with, looked at, except the moment by moment operation of this mind. This is a totally mute subject. It does not exist in our schools. It doesn't exist. No curriculum knows of it. No teacher or superintendent or curriculum supervisor maybe has ever heard of it. Should make a sweeping statement. Maybe here and there is one who has. But try to introduce the subject of teacher and students, children already, little children who are more open and aware than most older people. Children and teacher looking together at what happens to the mind as one pledges allegiance to the flag. I'm picking a hot subject right off the beginning, but it recently, together with our grandson, was watching this just reminds me, it's a little bit off the track, a cartoon. We used to watch cartoons when our son was sick. Then that was cartoon day for mom and son. This one was amazing. Something had changed. I had never seen that before. Maybe I was more naive. These cartoon characters through some explosion were transported to an island, and it was the 4th of July island, on which were met Washington and this and that president and there were the flags, and there was this and that. There was a real, not so subtle indoctrination going on of the values of this country. Values. I don't know why I'm even using this word. The symbols which are used to manipulate human minds comes election day, or not just comes election day, but the whole time of election. These symbols were being instilled in a very playful way, associated with the pleasure of watching a program, and there was a lot of popcorn available and stuff. But we started out this side track from this being a non-existent subject, school subject, to, for teacher and students, apart from accumulating knowledge and information, which is necessary for becoming technologically skilled to do a job. In addition to that, or art sometimes in a more broader curriculum of maybe private school. Public schools have had to cut out a lot of this because of cutting of budgets. But private schools may have this enriched curriculum of art and horseback riding, maybe skiing in the wintertime, music, learning to play instruments. But this is still not the whole story about human education. The most important part is to understand how this mind works. And not just in the students, but in the teachers and the parents, to have a pooled, combined understanding of fear, of conditioning, of the creation of illusion. But of course this doesn't exist maybe in a school, state school, public school curriculum, because everything would begin to be questioned. And are we free enough to question everything? Or are certain taboos which have to be left untouched in this country as in any other country? So, is one free to look at this mind without any opinions about it, any prejudices, no taboos? One may say, one may find that one needs a focal point, something to hold on to, or else it's just haywire, thoughts all over the place. But that is the human mind at this instant. Thoughts, one thought train, and then another one, and that one giving birth to another one, and connected with it all the feelings and emotions. What focal point is needed for that? Where do thoughts come from? As one watches, usually it's in retrospect, because if one is totally absorbed in remembering a pleasurable experience or being engaged in a fearful or anger-provoking past experience, one is so involved in either still sensing the pleasure and imagining in it and vicariously still feeling it, or still arguing with one's opponents or antagonists, annoyed that one didn't say what one thinks one should have said, and at that moment there's no awareness. But when there is an instant of awareness, it's possible in retrospect to see what has been going on. The memory is already available to be reviewed, to be seen. And I think it will be quite clear that the thoughts that are streaming through this mind come from memory. Past experiences, past readings, what one has been taught, what one has been made to believe, what one has read. All of this gives rise to thoughts now, repeating it or recombining it, thinking about it, re-arguing a case, all coming from memory. You may say, well, what about my plans for the future, the house I'm going to build for myself and my family, where I'm going to move, the job I'm going to do? Where do those thoughts come from? Look at it. Would they be possible without memory, without already knowing something about the job, about the place, about houses? All thinking comes from memory. You could say, what about if I have a entirely fresh experience right now? See this snowy hill here, the shadows of the trees and the branches and a little bit of blue sky showing through. That's not memory. But the next moment in talking about it, it has become memory. And then what the mind does, please observe it right now. As we're doing this together, what happens is, if it is a pleasurable experience, the thought comes, I want to have this forever. Or how can I keep living in a place where I can look out the window up a hill and see the shadows of the trees cast blue over the snow? So thought creates the future and it comes out of the past. It is totally interlinked with this whole experience of time. Past, present, future is memory and thought about the past, about the present, and about the future. What I will be in the future, what I will have in the future, or what may happen to me in the future. These thoughts either creating pleasurable feelings throughout the organism that one clings to and does not want to be disturbed in, because it feels so good, and one does not want to be disturbed in feeling good and comfortable. Or thoughts creating fear, that I may be disturbed, that something that I have now I may not have in the future, or that something painful that happened to me in the past may happen to me again in the future. And these thoughts elicit throughout the organism feelings of discomfort. Knots, as some people put it, in the chest, the stomach, the intestines, or headache. And those feelings we want to get rid of. We don't want to get rid of the feelings of pleasure, but we want to get rid of the feelings of disturbance, discomfort. Which means the discomfort that has been created throughout the organism through thoughts, thoughts being chemically and electrically, neuroelectrically connected with the whole organism. One thought can trigger all kinds of glandular juices which excite organs and muscles, pleasurably or discomfortingly. If there's discomfort, we want to be rid of it as fast as possible. And the body reacts instantly to that reaction. It's reaction eliciting a chain reaction, let's put it that way. A reaction to a fearful thought is discomfort in the body, and reaction to discomfort in the body is, I don't want that. Which is both thought and, again, an organismic tension against what's already there. The knot of discomfort is now being tensed against, which means more discomfort and more thoughts. Thoughts of self-pity or blaming someone else for it, which inevitably have again chemical reactions in the body, chemical and electrical reactions. And then we wonder why we feel as miserable as we do. And may take our symptoms to a doctor to receive a remedy, but don't understand the whole process that sets it in motion. And the remedy doesn't get at that process either, it only gets at the symptoms. How can one get at the whole process, at the root of it, and see it from the beginning? And see it so clearly that it does not mushroom or chain react from one thing to another. Always then opposing or resisting the latest development throughout the body-mind. We haven't observed it from the beginning. It's a fact. We are now faced with a knot in the chest or in the stomach. And we call the feeling surrounding it fear. What is this fear? And what is this knot? If we drop both of those words and just allow this to unfold, to this inner perception which is there if we're not afraid to look. The instant that attention is there, or perception rather than intellectual or emotional conditioned reaction for or against, which only incites further reactions, the instant attention is there, there's no need for reaction. That is the beauty of it. Attention means, what is this? Let's look. And the energy gathers not in remedying or reacting against or holding on, but in attending. It's the only place for the energy to gather. There's nothing to be done. There's nothing to be resisted or to be gotten rid of. Because this is all our ancient, conditioned past impinging upon what is here now. It has already created what is here now, but can it just be observed or seen, touched, with a mind that does not know, that is fresh from all ideas, all illusions, all beliefs or hopes. And therefore, there has no place to go. Attention has no place to go, it's there. And what is revealed is what? Don't call it fear, anxiety, this or that. But touch it, let it come to life, let it unfold itself. We've never done it. We've never allowed it to happen. Because we've been conditioned to fight it, control it, suppress it, hold on to it, resist it. Fear, which is in every human being on the face of this earth who feels me, I, as separate from you or them. Fear of being abandoned, rejected, fear of being lonely, and either the anticipated ache of it or the present ache of it. Why can't it be touched? Why does one have to escape into some kind of an illusion, some kind of an attachment, or some kind of an accumulation of things, material things, ideas, or because those don't work. If one accumulates things in order not to feel the fear, or accumulate people around one, friends, children, husband, wife, if one does this because one is afraid of being alone, the fear just takes a new face. Then there's the fear of losing the people or the things. It's not resolved by escaping into anything. Or seeking protection. Obviously, we have to eat and eat properly, keep warm. In cold climates, have a house. Even in warm climates, have a house. Maybe, although somebody told me recently that a relative of his is living in Hawaii with a wife and 2 children and just has a roof. Not even walls, just a roof. And asking, well, what if the winds that you hear about in Hawaii, winds and rains, if they come in? And I was told, well, if the winds and rains are very strong, then some bamboo is let down the sides of the roof. But most of the time the rain comes down straight. There's no need to wall off this roof, this place. Now, I'm not advocating that this is how one should live. It was very interesting to hear this. There are certain things that we need to stay healthy, and there's nothing wrong, to my way of thinking, maybe it is wrong, to have a nice place. It doesn't have to be a dump. There's a place for beauty of a house, lightness of it, and of course one's taste is conditioned. But we always seek protection beyond what we actually need to survive and to stay healthy. Because we're driven by irrational fear, which is not just associated, it's part and parcel of this feeling of me and what I'm identified with. Because that me is the result of past experiences, thoughts, images, of possessions. There's nothing stable about it, and there's nothing whole about it. It is a thought construction. Yet, as one person said, but it feels so real, it feels so solid, it can't just be thought. Look at it, investigate it, grapple with it. What is it? This here, sitting here, is real. But to say I am sitting here is just a manner of speaking to differentiate from this or that body. But if it becomes an important place here to sit, then there's already problems. I need that importance to feel satisfied, fulfilled, and banish the fear of being nobody, which we really are. We are nobody special at all. Everything we think and do is conditioned by everything that's gone on alongside of us and in the past. We don't own our thoughts and ideas. Thinking is collective. One can tell if a person comes from a different culture, different country, has different habits, manners, different ways of thinking. Superficially, fundamentally, we're all very much alike. In that we're all afraid and all looking for security and all identified with something which we hope will give us security, but we're always afraid it won't. And if we're about to lose it, what happens? Often, anger wells up. Anger at having to lose what one has invested in. Anger at being crossed in one's ways. Anger at being disturbed in one's until now undisturbed pattern. And what is anger? Not to say I shouldn't be angry, that's bad. Why do we get angry? But watch it. Watch all the symptoms of anger. They're amazing. What happens to the body when anger wells up? Seems to be increased blood circulation, seems to rush to the head. Angry people get red in the head often. There seems to be a tension throughout the nervous system. heart beats faster, throat gets constricted, often one shakes. The ears and eyes are not open, they're almost closed. One can't really see and hear properly. And tremendous energy is released through probably all kinds of juices that the glands pour out into the body. Energy to shout or hit, fight. And if one sees people intimidated around one, there may even be a real pleasure in that. Also, the sheer pleasure of release of all this built up organic tension, the release then is pleasurable, like any physical release where there was tension is pleasurable. And the sense of power of people around one seem intimidated, unable to have a quick comeback. And then what happens if one starts reflecting upon it, if one does at all? But usually one does reflect upon it and may either justify the anger, or one may blame the situation for it, blame other people for having made one angry. Or the distant past, my parents did it. Or I inherited, my father already was a hothead, I inherited it from him. Or can there be a completely different approach to anger? Not just resting in blame, undoing it, trying to undo it by blaming others, close or distant. May or may have had to do with the outburst of anger. Or does one look within? Not only at the causes of it, but at the very process of it. To be in touch with it, familiar with it. If the attention and the energy gathers in observing, and something happens to this thing called anger, which doesn't happen if one blames distant or close causes or justifies it by any which way. But just being in touch with all the symptoms of it, which we talk so much about, may not be enough. One must get to the root of it. And the root, if one digs far enough, is invariably me and my ways, my need to not be disturbed, my wants, my desires. And so it is for every angry or jealous or envious human being. It's not different here than there. That's why we're in collision with each other. So what is the remedy? I've heard people take remedies against anger. But unless it's as clear as daylight what triggers anger, and then the whole process of anger and the consequences of anger in relationship with each other, unless this is as clear as a landscape rolled out before one, will fall into time and time again and react to it in the same conditioned ways. And there will be no change. We try to change sort of from the outside by imposing controls upon ourselves or taking precepts, making promises, resolutions. But these become new causes for anger. If one has transgressed a precept, one gets angry at oneself. Or maybe at the person who made one do it. Nothing has changed. Change can only happen now, as the thing happens. By gathering every bit of energy to look, because one sees the utter importance of it. I can't find a strong enough word for it. One sees, unless right now there is insight into this, as it happens, the whole human history of collision, of me's will go on and be forever perpetuated in maybe new patterns, but basically the same thing. Me in collision with me, or the group that the me identifies with in collision with other groups that other me's are identified with. And there's no protection from that in anything, in any government, in any form of government. Governments, by protecting their citizens, are endangering them through defense, build-up of defense. If one watches all these new and changing governments in countries, each one promising protection for the people and each one in collision with the Contras or the revolutionaries, and the simple people suffer, weep, and die. It seems such a preposterous thought, if one thinks, just a thought, that clarity, unearthing of the root cause of anger or fear or greed, jealousy, whatever, one root cause is the root cause of it all, unearthing it here, shedding light and being free of it, would have anything to do with the state of the world. Seems such a preposterous thought. And may not do a thing, but it is because of all of these me's with their fears and needs and desires and ability to arouse enormous energies, because enormous energies can be harnessed through the eye for its purposes. It's because of that the world is in the state that we're in. One cannot bring peace to the world if there's no peace inside. And peace inside is not just a period of time in which one is not disturbed. And one may feel very peaceful during a period of time in which, for some reason or other, there are no disturbances from the outside or inside. I don't know what peace is, being peaceful inside. If it's not a concept, we don't want concepts, we have enough of those. But what does it really mean to be at peace? Could it mean that whatever comes up to one as a challenge, I'm using that word, maybe find a better one, is met completely? Freshly. Completely meaning not in conditioned ways, which means conditioned ways must be illumined as wanting to react, or having already reacted. It goes so fast. And then, wait a minute. Let's look at this challenge again, at this situation which seems to be a problem. And meeting it completely, meaning putting aside all one's habitual ways of responding, defending, aggressing, and looking freshly. It's wonderful if everybody who is involved in this does this together. But may not be the case. One has to do it. One cannot depend on others to do it for one or even with one. One has to do it oneself, alone. To meet a challenge completely, meaning not with the me sitting right smack in the middle, with its conditioned ways and wanting its way. Which it does, so it has to be seen and put aside. The seeing does that if there is clarity, intention. Sometimes people say to me, I do see ego, selfishness, but it goes on. It just continues. Seeing doesn't do for me what you say it should do. Or for one thing, I don't say it should do something. Find out what it does. But then just observe. Let's not immediately reach a conclusion and then stick with that. But watch. Is it that what goes on is so enormously pleasurable at the moment that even an occasional insight is brushed aside for the sake of continuing the pleasure? Everything is open to inspection. If one is so inclined, if one sees it, one has no choice, one has to look and clear up the mess. This is not said judgmentally. So we were talking about meeting a challenge completely. To be aware of all the conditioning that wants to jump. Maybe it has already jumped. But it's never too late to stop and listen. And look anew and afresh and drop old stuff, seeing that it's totally worn out, outmolded. It's like one would never put a shoe on that one wore as a child. Be too small. It would pinch, it wouldn't be right. So why can't one see that knowing what this person, let's say one has problems with a person, already knowing what this person is like from the way he was, all of that shadows over the person as he or she is now, and I want to see and meet him directly. Not to change him, but to be clear here. He may not change. I don't know. I have no power over that. And I want no power over that. But can there be free, complete action here rather than old, programmed reaction? And it is possible when there is energy gathered in attention, awareness, without wanting something for me. Then the thing is already cut up and distorted. Do you see that? So as one sits quietly, can one meet each moment freshly, meaning not, one knows not how. Without knowing it either. Pain, not calling it pain. Just letting it be, non-verbally. And not reacting against it or for it. Just, what is it? Let me listen. Feel. So quietly. So spaciously. The desire to be rid of it is seen in this quietness and put aside, seen as an interference to directly being that. Because if one silently observes this desire to be rid of something, one notices that it already sets in motion attention. We started out this way, I won't go over it again. And all of that impinges upon what needs to be observed, felt, totally, as it is. this work, the way we just described it, being completely whatever comes up, no separation. Can one be nothing? Nobody. Seeing that everything one is or wants to be is an image that gets in the way. We will end here for today.